Yeah. Well, it's beyond that. In 1946, 1947 is when William Albrecht was basically pushed out of the USDA because they brought in this new concept, this bigger is better concept, and Earl Butz in the 60s really pinpointed it, and we can really get into the specifics of that. But it was just a situation where they realized that they had to keep farm prices really super low to maintain their economic agenda on the Federal Reserve side. Mm-hmm. But they had to make it sound good, so they said, "Oh, cheaper food means you have more money to buy TVs with and stuff." Yeah. People didn't realize that the expensive food was the engine of the economy, and that the more you spent for food, the more money you would have at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. People have a hard time getting their heads wrapped around that, and right now it wouldn't work because only 1 out of 50 people are growing food or making the money off it. So I don't want more expensive food now because that's just going to go into the pockets of the super wealthy. Mm-hmm. What we need to do, and this is why I'm doing this show, is we need to get more people farming. Mm-hmm. We need to get the farm sizes down. You have to understand, since the 60s, all of the money, all of the research has gone into huge combines, huge equipment, huge this. If in the 60s they'd have approached it, let's get more sustainable farms, let's get organic, let's not contaminate the water. I mean, if you look at the externalities of just the contaminated water in Hawaii by atrazine, by heptachlor, and these other things, it doesn't even pay for the profits made by the pineapples and the sugar companies. When we look at the loss of our groundwater, and we look at the loss of the nearshore environment, we look at the loss of the soil, and we look at the health of the people, when you add that all up, incredible. It's almost like warfare has occurred here in Hawaii.
Right, and especially with the cost of the land
and now,
to do it.
And now the land is up in so much in value because all they can want to do is build houses and condos on it. I'd love to talk about land use and stuff like that, but that would be another 2 hours. If someone really wants to talk about it, I'll talk about it. But the issue is land should be made available at a low cost to people that want to farm organically.
Absolutely.
And should be made at $1,000, $5,000 an acre. We should be able to give land or long-term leases without real restrictions onto anybody that wants to farm. Yeah. And I think land should be opened up to anybody that wants to farm. Everyone should get their 5 acres and build a little shack on it and hang out and grow their food and get their garden going and then figure out what they want to grow.
Do you lease your land?
I lease my land from Bishop Estate on a long-term lease.
Okay. It's like 35-year type of thing?
Well, I'm going to renegotiate for 35, but I've been on a 45-year lease.
Okay.
Since the late 70s. So I appreciate the being able to do that, but I really think that the land in Hawaii should be opened up to everybody at this point. It's illogical, the land banking system that we have, because most of these large tracts of land aren't being allowed. Because I worked for some developers that were trying to put golf courses in, and I did soil surveys all over South Kona, all over Kona, and I found parts of their land were really, good for forests and maybe good for tree crops and stuff. But, they might have this one farm up above Kealakua had 200 acres that was prime for truck crops and stuff. And I said, well, why don't we just break this up into about 20 farms and let people farm this? And the owner of the place at the time, they had bought it, was a Japanese group that had bought it from the Greenwells. They said, we can't do that because if we do that, we'll never be able to do our big development. And so basically they were land banking. And most of the schemes, the eucalyptus groves they put in on a lot of the sugarcane land, and a lot of the schemes they come up with, these large plantation-type schemes, are really just land banking. They're not expecting to make any money. They're just trying to keep the land out of people's hands so that we don't have this cultural paradigm shift where people start realizing their own personal sovereignty. 90% of the food that comes into Hawaii, it comes from the mainland. The people, the power elite, the governor, the lieutenant governor, all from down, all are making their money from the people that are making the money, bringing the food in. Which gets me to the real issue, which is if we really want to have a sovereign Hawaiian agriculture, we have to start looking at export substitution or import substitution. What are we bringing into Hawaii right now that we can grow here?
Right.
And then begin supporting that. Well, bananas, mangoes, oranges, coffee, avocados, and then we look at root crops, sweet potatoes, taro, etc.
Never made sense to me.
Okay.
I could never figure that out.
And absolutely, we get back now to the real problems here in Hawaii, and I hope someone's listening in Hawaii. Understand this. This is where I'm coming from. there are diseases ravaging the banana crop right now around the world that literally they say in 10 years there might not be one banana left growing alive on the planet because of fungus. There's a fungus and different insects that they can't get control of. Because these huge plantations, these demineralized situations have just opened themselves up to just unbelievable diseases. And with the use of Roundup that is pervasive around the whole world, Roundup selectively kills most organisms except for a few really highly pathogenic ones. So even in Hawaii, someone's spraying Roundup right next to my field. They are basically killing off. Basically, Roundup was created as a chelating agent. It was actually patented as a chelator. Then it was figured out that it's such a strong chelator. If you put it on the ground next to a plant, it chelates the minerals that are needed in photosynthesis, specifically manganese. Manganese is part of the manganese oxide. I think is part of the enzyme system that creates photosynthesis. So if you take the manganese out of a plant, its photosynthesis is pretty much destroyed. The plant weakens and is left open to all kinds of diseases, funguses, viruses, bacterial diseases. Now, anyone that knows agriculture understands that plants have immune systems and plants can fight off a little bit of fungus here and there. But when the reservoir, so to speak, that's the term they use, of funguses and viruses gets to a certain point, the plant can't resist it. And so what we are doing with Roundup all around the country, all around this world, is we're creating a huge, because these plants aren't just dying from the Roundup. They're actually getting infected by other plant diseases and then dying. And they're creating this huge reservoir of plant diseases. And these plant diseases are infecting well-grown plants. And then the farmer that's next door to a Roundup guy now has to, if he's organic, is trying to figure out, well, I got to use a little copper, I got a little sulfur, I'm losing a third of my plants to black spot or bacterial wilt, I have to get my mycorrhizals, I have to do this. All the money that I'm spending on my garden now to fight these things, which I don't now because I'm highly mineralized, I pretty well have my micronutrients and my biology really under control. It's not my problem, but sometimes it is. But other farmers, we're subsidizing. Well, just to get it to that point, I spent thousands of dollars an acre.
Right,
but we're subsidizing these.
Got 5 minutes.
Yeah, we're subsidizing these guys. So a guy that's using Roundup is on welfare.
Right.
We're subsidizing him with our diseases that are on our plants. And when we bring in plant materials from around the world, because some highfalutin 1%er wants to blend coffee and he brings green coffee in, they brought in this borer that is now costing every farmer probably $500 to $1,000 an acre. Wow. And when you add that up, that's subsidizing all these blended coffees. So I would ask everybody to stop buying blended Kona coffee because they're bringing in diseased beans. They say they're spraying them, and they're spraying them with methyl chloride, which is absolutely toxic. So any blended Kona coffee is highly toxic. Highly toxic.
Wow.
And then we have the same thing with bananas. We keep bringing bananas in around the world. Eventually, we're going to get that fungus, and it's going to wipe out all our bump. They brought in that virus that's taken out a lot of banana quarantine was about. Yeah. And then we're also looking at citrus. There's a citrus greening that's occurring around the world right now that's taking out Florida. It's about to get to California. So my proposal is for Hawaii or any agricultural reason is we need to put up trade barriers for any agricultural product that we can grow that is diseased. We need, and it's in the American Constitution that we're allowed to do this. Hawaii tomorrow could stop the importation of citrus into Hawaii, could stop the importation of bananas into Hawaii, could stop the importation of coffee into Hawaii. And within 5 years, we could become self-sufficient, I'd say 80% of all the food we grow. Because those 3 crops could become the financial anchors for growing the sweet potatoes and the lettuces and all these other things that are needed. Because I believe in a polyculture. And if we have, we're not bringing in any of these other things, eventually we could plant 10,000 acres of citrus. And within that polyculture of citrus, people could have yams and all different, imagine anything, papayas, coffee, all kinds of stuff. We could be doing polycultures all over Hawaii. But as long as the rest of the world and Hawaii and the United States can dump their stuff into Hawaii. Now they'll say, "Oh, well, we need our oranges." We really don't need our oranges because the best oranges in the world grow in Hawaii, but we can't sell them. Right now is our major citrus harvest. They're dumping below the cost of production California oranges into Hawaii right now, below what I can pick them for. Right. They're selling in the store here. Yeah. So you know by how much it costs to ship things here that they're just dumping it here to keep us from ever having anything. Yeah. Now, read the Constitution. A state of Hawaii can import duties on California avocados. They can do import duties on, and they call inspection fees. And we can build an economy here if the governor, if our state legislatures got educated and understood the real financial imperative to create a system of agriculture where we consume our own production. And that's what people have to start thinking about. We create an economic reality when we are consuming our own production. Yeah. By consuming our own production, the money stays here and it circulates within our own economy. And that's how we eventually create a stable culture. That's the only way it's going to work. And I think that's a good way.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to wrap it up. And it's been just like old days almost back in the KCOF. We had a great thing going back then, and this is an extension of that, I believe. We're taking it kind of to the next level where we can actually, remotely broadcast from our own homes and so forth. And that's the Radio Alchemy concept, that we're able to do that as well as bring live events, music events, and so forth to you just through our own computers. And eventually, hopefully, we have a low-power FM application in process, and we're kind of like building it backwards, so to speak. But right now, we've got the internet part wired, and this can go out anywhere on the planet, basically. And we have our website that can be tapped into. That is at eq3.tv/RA/. And for those of you who want to bypass that, in possibly even within the next week or two, we will be radioalchemy.net. So that'll simplify things quite a bit. John, it's been a pleasure having you back here. I'm hoping that we can continue this
I want to do this
for the next
Thursday.
Several weeks. Yeah,
for the next few weeks until I can get till we get solid, and hopefully I can get up to my farm and start doing some broadcasting from there too. And I want to hopefully get some feedback from everybody, and hopefully contact Michael here, and let's find out what the issues are really important that are on your mind. I know we're coming into a new growing season on the mainland. There's going to be a lot of rooftop gardeners and stuff like that, container gardeners, and how do we prepare soil. I'd love to get more into that with people. And maybe next week we'll talk about genetic modification. I think I'm an expert in that, and we will get a little bit more into why we should avoid any biotech, high-tech foods or food-like substances.
We barely touched on the G word.
Yeah. So we'll get to that eventually. Yeah.
Well, I hope to catch you all at the Electronic Music Festival this weekend. That starts actually tonight over in Pahoa at, I believe it's called the Lava Shack. And tomorrow night at the Amethyst, or the new Amethyst nightclub down on Ali'i Drive from 8 o'clock on. And then the big event, of course, is at the Hilo Palace Theater on Saturday. So take care, my friends. Thank you for tuning in to this most fascinating program. I'm sure we'll try and air it at least one more time, if not two, over the next couple days. Have a great evening and a very pleasant rest of the week. Aloha.